The Mothman, what has come to be known as the Mothman. The first sightings originated in the early 1960s, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Now supposedly there were eyewitnesses near the old TNT factory. People described what was apparently something that was between 6 to 7 feet tall, gigantic wings, and red glowing eyes. Now that seemed to be the description that more and more people were coming up with. Some people seemed to be actually traumatized by what they saw. At first they were afraid to report it, but then again more and more sightings came to light. Now of course many people have said it was just some kind of a large heron or crane that they saw, but the eyewitnesses themselves, they seemed sincere and very adamant. There was one sighting where it was a group of grave diggers, no less. They actually were in a cemetery and they saw in the broad daylight some 6 to 7 foot tall creature that apparently had bat-like wings, and it actually took off while they watched. Now they all agreed what they saw. Again, a 6 to 7 foot tall creature that appeared to have either some kind of feathers or moth-like structure to its body, and again the two glowing red eyes. Some say were actually situated right on its chest. Now this was in the early 1960s, and along the next several years more and more sightings came to light. They were reported. It became a local legend, but the people who experienced and encountered this creature swear that it was not a bird, that it was some creature of unknown origin. And despite the fact that it had bat-like wings, it didn't seem to flap its wings. It more like hovered and floated. It could just take off like that. Well, I guess the epitome was on the evening of December 15th, 1967, when a terrible, terrible tragedy took place in West Virginia. It was actually on the bridge that located Ohio to West Virginia. It was rush hour traffic, about 5 p.m., when suddenly the bridge suspension for some reason collapsed, and at least 46 people died in that collapse. Cars went plummeting into the cold waters, and of the 46 people that died, 2 bodies were never recovered. They're buried in a local cemetery nearby, those bodies that they did find. Now some people claim that the Mothman appeared right before this disaster, was kind of a harbinger of what was about to happen. And of course you get the story by Keel, the novel, The Mothman Prophecies, which was made into a movie, and much has been made about that. However, there were neighbors in the area who claimed to have seen dozens of glowing strange lights right before that bridge collapsed on the same date, December 15th, 1967. Now since then, the sightings of the Mothman seem to have tapered off, but the people who live there will never forget what they experienced, what they saw. Many eyewitnesses, still living to this day, swear it was some kind of creature of unknown origin. And of course it's also been associated with UFO sightings and again the strange lights in the area. Could it be extraterrestrial in origin? We don't know. I don't think we'll ever know for sure. Of course, in our own city of Warwick, Rhode Island, in Apponaug, we've had something of what may be a Mothman sighting, or at least it has been described that way. Some people, after discussing it, think it was a heron or some kind of huge bird. However, more than the Mothman sighting has occurred in that cemetery, in Brayton Cemetery in Apponaug. They've seen strange glowing lights. Some claim that it is a pair of eyes that have suddenly appeared. There's been paranormal and even preternatural occurrences in that cemetery. People have heard noises such as a coffin being dragged. There's supposedly a young girl whose appearance has been made within that cemetery. I don't know. There are many eyewitnesses, but again, little substantial proof. But the Mothman legend lives on to this day, especially in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. They actually have an annual outing, an annual celebration, where they call it Mothman Week. And outside the museum that's dedicated to the Mothman, they have a life-size statue reenacting the Mothman with its red glowing eyes and its claws and its spread wings. And of course, that's a popular tourist attraction. People pose to have their pictures taken in front of the Mothman. And the museum has all sorts of artifacts relating to the time that the Mothman was sighted. There were disturbing appearances at the time from the Men in Black, so they say, that this mysterious man in black and his cohorts were going around asking questions of the local citizens, and very strange characters indeed. So, whatever you want to believe, there's people who swear to this day that the Mothman is a reality. Brayton Cemetery, named after Judge Brayton of the Supreme Court, Rhode Island Supreme Court. Now, this cemetery is rumored to have paranormal activity. I personally know people who have experienced activity here, anywhere from being groped, prodded by unseen fingers while they're walking through here, to visitations of a young woman with long blonde hair. A lovely young woman has been seen by people walking through the grounds of this cemetery. Even standing outside the cemetery grounds, I know somebody who felt herself being grabbed from behind. Not in a disturbing manner or roughly, but gently caressed by a presence supposedly emanating from this cemetery. Now, my brother-in-law, Dick Hutchings, he had an experience here. He and the woman he was with were driving by, and they saw something seemingly ascend from this cemetery. A friend of mine who was in this cemetery in the evening, one evening he happened to hear what sounded like a coffin being dragged across the grounds. That's the only way he could describe it. He looked up. He saw what appeared to be two glowing eyes. As he watched, these eyes approached him and then split off into two directions before vanishing. It is this entity that we now refer to as the Mothman of Brayton Cemetery.
Dick, your sighting here took place in the mid-70s. You were driving along Post Road. Can you give me an idea of what you saw and how it affected you at that time?
Well, just driving down Route 1 there, and just happened to look up in the sky over this cemetery, and just something just caught our eye. Just didn't make any sense. And it looked like a pair of wings and a body hanging down. That's about it.
If I recall, you said something about there being some sort of Native American look about the entity. I don't know exactly what to call it. Entity.
If I ever said that, I don't recall it.
Okay.
It's been too long.
Well, maybe it was.
I don't recall it being like that. All I recall is the image of the wings and the body.
Because there was some question. There are so many Indian burial grounds around here as to whether there may have been some sort of Native American spirit. It certainly seems plausible to me from the shape that you described. Did you get a look at the face at all of the creature? Or you just more like a black
silhouette?
It was just
it wasn't a silhouette, but there was no face either.
So it was pretty
It
tangible,
was
though.
far enough away that I couldn't make out the face or anything, but it was definitely tangible. No question about that. Whatever it was, it was there.
Okay. And now you live here in Warwick. Have you seen anything in the area since then that's comparable to what you saw back in the 70s?
No,
Never again.
never.
So when you saw this thing flying overhead, could you estimate the size of this thing? Do you think it was the size of a person, larger, smaller?
It was really impossible to determine that because it was just too far away. I had no idea. I think I may have thought it was pretty large because that was what caught my attention.
Mm-hmm.
Was it was big enough to be flying way over the graveyard, and yet it was big enough to get my attention. So.
Okay. And when you say wings, I know you said it was a little dark out, so it was hard to see too well?
It was definitely wings.
Feathery wings, leathery wings?
Looked feathery.
Feathery, okay. And so if you think about it anatomically, did you see arms? Because that would make something actually have 6 appendages instead of 4. So do you think there were arms?
I didn't see any arms.
Okay. So we're assuming that the wings would be
wings
like the
and
arms.
legs.
Okay.
That's all I saw.
What kind of feet did you see?
Didn't see any feet.
Okay.
Wasn't clear enough.
So, Richard, what was your wife's reaction at the time? I mean, you were together, and did she see it first, or did you?
We're talking 35 years ago.
Long time ago,
something
yes.
like that. So, all I know is we were both pretty much jaws dropped, just wondering what the heck did we just see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the conversation other than I know we were both, neither one of us could make sense out of what we had just seen. So
Pretty much took you off guard, right?
Yeah.
And you weren't expecting to see something coming by a cemetery at that time at night.
It wasn't at night.
No?
No, this was probably about like it is right now.
Mm-hmm. So you did get a clear view of it.
Clear view, but short.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it was kind of off in the distance. So
Yeah. How do you account for that? It just disappearing and taking off so quickly.
no, it didn't. It could have still been there.
Oh, really?
Had I stopped my car and but I just kept driving with the traffic. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I just lost sight of it because I continued driving on.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as a sighting of the Mothman goes, my thoughts on it are pretty much that Dick probably saw some kind of bird. There's a lot of different birds that are indigenous to this area that would be flying overhead in that region. One, of course, would be a heron or a crane or an egret. They have a pretty sizable wingspan, can be up to 6 feet on some of them. Because the water is right down the hill from the cemetery, that would make the most sense. Another bird that comes to mind would be turkey vulture. There's quite a few of those. As more and more of the forest gets knocked down in Rhode Island, we're seeing more and more of them come closer into the suburbs and into the city areas. Then of course you have hawks and eagles. We even have bald eagles now in this region. And it would make sense to be a bald eagle as well because they hunt for fish. And the fish are right in that location. So just based on everything he said, I'm going more with a natural explanation, less with a supernatural explanation. directly adjacent to the cemetery in question. So far since I've been here, I've identified probably 4 species of gull, several species of duck, including mallard and black duck. And in the warmer weather, I've seen several different types of egrets and herons in this area. Not to mention osprey and even eagles and hawks that come down to this area for not only fish, but there's rats near the water. So, taking that into consideration, it's understandable when these birds go on the wing, someone may mistake them with the light coming down and they're kind of backlit for something else, especially if they're holding something in their talons or holding something in their beak. The wingspans on these animals, the wingspans on these birds are pretty considerable. Some of them go up to 6 feet. So I can see where, if you weren't expecting it and it flew directly overhead, it might startle somebody or they might mistake it for something else.
I found it interesting, a little disappointing that that my brother didn't remember that there was a Native American aspect that he actually brought up during his interviews with Keith when he was writing Paranormal Realities 1.
Well, it would make sense if he did interpret it as a Native American type of thing. There's a lot of Native American folklore in this region. The Thunderbird is a really important part of Native American culture. There's different stories that go along with different regions of the United States, but the Northeastern culture, many of the tribes actually believe that the Thunderbirds were men who could change themselves or transform themselves into flying creatures, and they were seen as semi-supernatural. So that would kind of go along with what he originally described to you.
But the area does have a lot of Native American history. It was once known as the Old Pequot Trail. Subtribes of the Narragansetts have lived in the area nearly 2,000 years before Roger Williams, I discovered. 3 stone bowls were discovered in the area. The stone bowl makers were believed to have inhabited the area between 100 BC and 500 AD. I also found that the Native American name for the area was Apanake or Apananchak, which means place of the oyster. Apparently that was a stopping place for people along the trail. Native tribes would stop there and have lunch of oysters and whatever else was in the area. Across the street there is what's called the Drum Rock. Apparently this was sort of a communication device that the natives used. They would pound on this rock to alert other tribes of danger and possibly meetings of some kind. So there is a lot of Native American history.
Well, it is a region rich in Native American culture. Definitely, I agree with you. And you know, birds do figure largely into the Native American belief system, so if it were something that were related to that type of culture, it would make sense that it would have wings or feathers. You know, that figured largely into their system of mythology and beliefs.
something. You know, that we've gone over the evidence, we've gone over the testimony, we've even had eyewitness accounts, but what are we left with? Opinions.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to ever know for sure what he saw.
No.
I think after doing some research, you know, we have some possibilities.
True. Yeah. As you brought up, there's a lot of waterfowl around the area. It is right near a body of water, but I don't know. What do you think, Sandra, after talking with your brother extensively and hearing the story for so many
I
years?
think it boils down to two options. Either number one, was definitely a bird, a crane, a heron, something along those lines. During the initial sightings at Point Pleasant, 2 firemen claimed to have seen the creature. They did say that it had red eyes, but they said it was definitely a bird.
Right.
The other option that I'm thinking is along the lines of the big Rhode project here in Rhode Island, the Rhode Island Bigfoot. There's no way that a Sasquatch could live in this area that just doesn't have the habitat. If there ever was really a creature that was seen, it was a transdimensional creature. It came here from an alternate universe and it was just passing through. That could be the case with this Mothman-like creature. If it really was not a bird and it was some sort of a Native American creature of some kind, it was just passing through. It was a one-shot deal, it was a one-shot sighting, and that was the end of it.
Right. And of course, a lot of years have elapsed, almost 4 decades, since your brother had that sighting. But he was not alone at the time. And the other eyewitness was rather startled too. It wasn't just something casual like that could have been a bird. I mean, they were really startled, really genuinely startled when they had that sighting. And what I was described when I first heard the story, it was something that really caused them to almost slam on the brakes, and it really startled them. I was told it was a man-sized creature, possibly wearing buckskin, and it raised its arms and then just shot across the road. And it really, really did startle them. They didn't even want to turn around and go back to see what it was, if it was still there. Now, that was the impression of 2 eyewitnesses at the time. As I said, a lot of years have elapsed since then, but
I think when you initially have something like that happen, you're startled, you're shocked, it's fresh in your mind. But as years go by, you think about it, you look for a rational explanation.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the way it was described to you compared to the way it was described to us recently,
it's hard
very,
to
very different.
separate what is fact from what is legend.
Right. You also have to remember a cemetery carries with it that aura of mystery, and there's so many people now that want to go and look for ghosts, and you know, it's just assumed that because you're in a cemetery that something supernatural is going to happen, which isn't necessarily so. And many times cemeteries are a great place for wildlife.
Yes,
you know,
true.
It's quiet, you know, there's a lot of open area, and that one just happens to be right by the water where all the water birds are, like we said, so that's something to think about too.
Right. And as Lisa brought up, there's, you know, it's just there's so much wildlife around there, and just so much has happened in between in the interval, and I guess, like Lisa said, we'll never truly know. We'll never know for sure. So until somebody comes forward with some tangible evidence or another eyewitness comes forward, I guess we're left with speculation. We've done a lot of extensive research, all we can, I think, right now.
Yep, we've worked with what we had, and you know, maybe somebody out there, if they're watching this and they have any additional information to share with us, they can contact us and add to what we have already.
Right. But I know for a fact, people are always going to be reporting further paranormal experiences in that cemetery and the whole locale, the whole area. Something's always coming forward, so.
It's a fascinating subject.
Yes. The Mothman of Brayton Cemetery.